Hey y'all, it's Andrea with the cutest little thing. Thanks so much for hopping on to watch this video today. If you enjoy thrift flips, DIYs, home decor, upcycling, and all of the things, then you're at the right place. If you've never been to my channel before, welcome, and I hope you like what you see. And if you've hung out with me before, thank you so much for coming back. Alright, let's get started with today's projects. I have two pickle jars here. One is large and one's a little bit smaller. I've already taken them outside after a good cleaning and I spray painted them with regular black spray paint. Now that they're dry, I'm back in my craft room and I have some black chalk paint. This is the color ink in the Waverly, and I'm adding baking soda to it just to create texture. And when you add baking soda for texture, you can add as much or as little as you would like, all depending on how much texture you want in your paint. And I wanted a good bit of texture here, so I added a good bit of baking soda and I mixed that up really well. Now I'm just applying that on each jar with a regular paintbrush. And I know you're probably thinking, why is she going black on black when it's already black? But I just used that spray paint as sort of like a primer just to create that surface where the chalk paint would adhere better. It just kind of primes that surface and gets it ready for that chalk paint. And I go ahead and do the bottom of the jars as well, and I just turn them upside down to dry really well, and we will do the lids later. And also my spray paint had a little bit of gloss to it, and I wanted more of that matte chalky finish that the chalk paint gives. And now here we go with our lids, painting that on, that same chalk paint textured paint mixture that we made. Now I'm taking my Mod Podge matte and I'm just going to brush it all over our jars. This is going to just seal in that chalk paint that we've already applied. And it's also going to create just a little bit of a crackle effect for our next step after this, after our Mod Podge is completely dry. And I'm using my little spritz bottle of water, and I'm just spritzing on a little bit of water, and all that's doing is just helping my Mod Podge spread more evenly. It is just, when you apply it to a big area, it tends to get tacky and just extra sticky. So applying a little bit of water just helps get that spread evenly all around on your surface. And I'm just applying a good even coat. We don't need a lot and we don't need a little, just a good even coat. Now that that Mod Podge is completely dry, I'm going in with the color Plaster in the Waverly. And I'm just painting on a good coat, and I end up doing 2 coats of that plaster color. And I just want to cover the entire jar with that paint. And again, I take that spritzer bottle. Sometimes I just spray a little bit directly into my paint, and then sometimes I just spray the jar. It just all depends. My paint here, it's getting low in its jar, and when it in its little container, and when it does that, it tends to thicken up. So if your paint does that, you can always add just a little bit of water to it, and that'll help it not be so thick when it gets low like that. And being we've already sealed it, our chalk paint is good and sealed. So by spraying that water, it's not going to reactivate it or anything and wipe it off. So that's a good reason to seal that chalk paint in too. Now I'm going in with my Prima transfers. And I will link this in the description box below, where you'll know where you can head over to get these goodies for yourself. I chose this bigger transfer that said homemade, and I just peeled that white part away from the clear part. And you just lay it right down. You position it on your piece. You want it to be nice and straight and even. And just lay that down. Then you take that transfer tool that they give you with your packs of transfers, and you just rub back and forth all over, and you just begin lifting up that clear piece as you rub back and forth, just slowly and steadily. You don't want to try to work too fast. You want to be sure that transfer adheres to your piece. And if you do pull up and a piece of your transfer hasn't adhered yet, you just simply lay it right back down and rub that area with that transfer tool, and then try again. And usually it will come off for you that second time. It can be a tedious process, so you just want to take your time when adding your transfers and just not get in a big hurry. As you can see there, I'm pulling up just a little bit and then rubbing and then pulling up a little bit more. And you just keep doing that technique until you get the entire transfer adhered to your piece. And then I just take that clear piece, once all of it is on there, I just take it and kind of rub it on that transfer just to make sure everything is down and all the edges and corners. Now I'm going to cut out another piece of transfer for the bottom of my jar. So I'm just going to do that same technique. And you want to position it and get it where you want it before you lay it down, because once you make contact with that transfer onto your piece, usually you are committed and you won't be able to lift it back up to move it to change it, because it usually starts adhering as soon as it makes contact. And I love how that turned out and how those two pieces just went together so nicely. Now I'm taking my chippy paintbrush and that black chalk paint again. And again, that's the color ink. And I'm barely getting any paint on my brush. I'm going to do a dry brushing technique on this jar. And I just get a little bit of paint on my brush, and then I offload a little bit. I want hardly any paint on there, and I'm sort of giving it a distressed look by doing this, just dry brushing on that black. And I'm also going over that transfer as well, because I want the entire jar to be the same, so I want it to all blend together nicely. And I do the lid as well, and you can see there up close the look that gives. And I really like that look. And when you're dry brushing, you can dry brush on as much or as little distressing as you want, or you can skip this step altogether if you just like the white with that black transfer, that contrast. I think that's pretty too. But I am just a distressed gal. I love things distressed. And look how cute that is, you guys. I love how that turned out. Now we're going to do our smaller jar, and just the same technique. I'm picking out another one of those Prima transfers here. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. I picked out a certain one for the top portion of my jar, and then I'm going to go back and cut out another one for the lower portion of my jar. And they both had the number 216 on them, so I was careful to add that detail where they would make a good pair and go well together as a set. So they both have that number 216 on them. I thought that was really neat how that worked out. And there is that one. And now I'm just going in and distressing this one also using that dry brushing technique. And this is just a regular chippy brush. I usually pick mine up from either Walmart or Harbor Freight. Let me know in the comments if you like the distressing technique or if you would have just left it white with the black transfer. And there is that, guys, both of our jars. I love how these turn out. I love those Prima transfers. And there were so many other ones in the packet to choose from. Now I'm just sealing in those transfers and all of our paint in with our DIY clear wax. I'm just using a little sponge brush to rub that wax in, sort of polishing it into the piece. And just being sure to cover the entire piece, especially those edges, to give it that extra protection. And I love how these turned out, you guys. I hope you do too. And thank you so much for joining me for this project. Who knew that pickle jars that are usually just thrown in the trash would be so beautiful and so elegant? Y'all, I was so excited to find this piece a few weeks ago. I love the shape of it and the handles. So I took it outside and spray painted some regular white spray paint all on the piece, all around, all the way around. Initially, I was going to leave the handles the way they are or were, but I ended up painting over them as well. So I'm just giving this a good coat of this. Like I say, it's just regular white spray paint, and I let it dry really well. I brought it inside to my craft room. And now I'm going to go in with the color ink in the Waverly. This is just a black chalk paint, and I am mixing in some baking soda to give me some texture. And when you add baking soda to your paint, you can add as much or as little as you would like, all depending on the amount of texture that you want to have on your piece. And I just gave this vase a good solid coat of my chalk paint baking soda mixture. And I just blow dried that paint just to give it a jump start on the drying process. Now I'm going to go in with my Mod Podge. This is just regular Mod Podge matte. And I'm brushing that on this entire vase all over that chalk paint. This will not only seal in that chalk paint, but it will also give me some crackle when I paint over it in the next step. I did want just a little bit of crackle on this piece. And as you can see, I have my water bottle there and I'm just spritzing on water. And that's just helping my Mod Podge to glide on a little bit easier. It does tend to get tacky and sticky as you're brushing it on, especially if you're brushing it on a large area. So by spraying that water, it just helps your paintbrush glide across and it just helps it go on nice and evenly on your piece. I let that dry completely. Now I'm going in with the color Plaster in the Waverly, and this is just an off-white color. And again, you saw that I just spritzed water over my vase. And again, that just helps that paint glide on and spread throughout evenly. And I'm just giving this a good coat of this off-white chalk paint. And I am hoping to get a little bit of crackle, like I said before, since we applied that Mod Podge. So we will see how this piece ends up crackling in the end. We'll begin to see it when that white chalk paint starts to dry. That's where I was going to leave the handles black, and I just sort of dry brushed over them with that white, and I did the inside of the neck part like that as well. And I did like that, but I just ended up going a different direction with this piece, and you'll see here in just a minute. I'm just finishing up with that white chalk paint on the other side. I know you can't see what I'm doing on that back side, but that's all I was doing. And there is where I decided to just go ahead and paint over those handles and over the inside of that neck, that same plaster color that we used on the rest of the vase. I just thought that gave it a little bit more of a cleaner look to have it all that white color. Look how good this is looking, you guys. And just making sure I'm getting up underneath those handles, making sure I didn't miss any spots. And now I'm just drying that paint, speeding up that process. Look at these beautiful transfers, you guys. If you're watching on YouTube, I will link these in the description box below. I cannot remember. I think it's Prima, I think, but don't quote me on that. I will link that in the description box. And if you're watching on Facebook, you can always comment to find out anything you need to know. Here I'm showing these little rolls of paper I get off of Temu, and I just like to purchase those. They're super cheap, and I just like to cut me a strip to work on, and then I can just change it out as needed. Okay, here's the transfer that I chose for this piece. It's nice and large. It's going to cover the entire front portion of this vase, and I just think it is absolutely beautiful. So to apply transfer, it comes with this little stick I have in my hand, a little transfer tool, and you just simply peel away like you saw me do. You peel away that white paper, and you place your transfer on your piece how you want it. And once you place it down, you need to make sure that's where you want it, because chances are you're not going to be able to lift it back up to fix it because it already starts adhering onto that piece. And then you just take your transfer tool and rub back and forth and begin pulling away at your little clear piece of paper or film as you go back and forth with your transfer tool. And slowly and surely, you just keep working at it until your entire piece is nice and adhered, until your entire transfer is nice and adhered to your piece. And if you lift up on that clear piece and you see a piece of that transfer is still stuck on there, you can just lay it right back down and rub a little bit more with that tool. And then I just rub on it just to make sure it's nice and adhered onto that vase. And look how pretty this looks, you guys. I decided that transfer, it looks black, but it is navy blue. So I have some navy blue paint here. I just got it and I wanted to dry brush and distress on that paint. This paint is Junk Monkey. If you are familiar with the Junk Monkey paint, I have used it some. I had a friend of mine to give me some, and I do enjoy using it. But what it is, it's actually a clay and a mineral-based hybrid paint. And it has a one-of-a-kind, super adhesive formula. So it is a great paint to use if you are in the market trying to find a new brand of paint. You could surely try that one. But nice and carefully, I'm just using a chippy brush, and I'm barely getting any paint onto my paintbrush and just doing a very light motion with it, getting it onto that vase. As you can see, it gives it that distressed look. I really like that look. And I also went over that transfer just nice and lightly, so it would just all blend together nicely. And I did end up going a little bit heavier with my dry brushing technique around those handles and around the top part of my vase. And again, it's all about your preference. You can do this technique and add as much distressing as you would like, or as little distressing as you would like. Or you could skip this step altogether if you just like that bright white contrast with that navy blue transfer. I think it was beautiful like that too. So it's just all about your preference. But to do this technique, you barely want any paint on your paintbrush, and you can even offload after you dip your brush into your paint. Then you could dip it like onto a plate or onto a piece of cardboard or just something to offload some of that paint out of your brush. I hope you guys have enjoyed this project so far. I want you to look out for new videos on YouTube every Tuesday and Saturday night. Not really a specific time, but definitely those specific days. So try to check those out every Tuesday and Saturday. And here is our finished product, you guys. Let me know what you think. I think it turned out absolutely beautiful. I love these transfers, and there were so many others to choose from in that Prima packet, and I will link all of that in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and enjoy the rest of your day.